good amount of new followers. Thank you so much, sis. Y'all are so sweet, so sweet. So I haven't been on in a while. I have cut my hair. My locks are gone. Thank the Lord. Um, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I cut my hair because it was time for some much needed changes. And the reason I had my hair locked was because it was a spiritual pact that I made with myself and with the Most High. I just needed to see some things through. So that was the reason that I locked my hair in the first place. This year has probably been the hardest year for me with just even having my hair locked, because that's just very, very challenging for me, for someone who is always changing, ever changing. Hey, cousin, love you too. So for someone who is ever changing, especially her hair, it was really, really tough for me to hold down the locks for a whole year. But I'm proud of myself. I made it through. I made it to my birthday. I did a whole year of locks and I cut that junk off because I was carrying the weight of that year in my hair and I couldn't take it no more. So anyway, let me introduce myself really quickly. My name is Nia Sade Akinyemi, the literary revolutionary. I teach people of color how to revolutionize their brands through writing, publishing, and marketing powerful books with ease and confidence. I help my clients flip their manuscripts into literary masterpieces through my author coaching, editing, partner publishing, and book launching services. People often come to me when they have a story to tell, a skill to share, expertise to offer, or advice to give, and they want to put it in the form of a book. And I pride myself in helping my clients gain respect as authorities, not only in their lives, but in their fields through written and published text. In addition to all of that, I am the founder of the Black Authors Matter campaign, the Write the Book Sis movement. I'm also a best-selling author and an award-winning activist. So my work in literary arts in the publishing arenas is solely, specifically for people of color. I believe that what I bring to the table is significant to those that look like me, because we are in a space where we can really be thriving in the literary and publishing industries, especially as independent authors. So you'll often hear me speak and refer to authors as authorpreneurs, or at least independent authors as authorpreneurs, because there's writing, but then there's also handling the business side of things. So I am going to be talking a little bit about that, but y'all just, let me know who you are if you're just joining in. I want to address everybody, so I'm going to run back really quickly and just say hello to everyone who has said something. Hey, Shanella. How you doing, sis? Hey, Kiosha. Hey, Michelle from Dallas, thinking about writing your book. Yes. Hey, cuz. All right. Author JB Harris. Hello, hello. Hey, Rashika or Roshika. Tell me if I said it right. Names are important, so I want to get it right. You're from Atlanta. Yes, yes, yes. Writing your book, hopefully done by May 2019. I love the goal, love the date. Yes, yes. Thank y'all so much. I am located in Atlanta, based in Atlanta. So if you're in the Atlanta area, then we right here. We neighbors. Thank you so much. Hey, Kim on Instagram, you wrote your book, need to get it printed. Awesome, 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 awesome. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Hey, Nay. So nice to see you. Just a longtime lover of writing and happy to learn more from Portland. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, you all. So tonight, if you notice, I have my little microphone here, because what I'm going to be doing tonight is recording this live I haven't decided yet whether or not this is going to be a podcast, if I'm going to start a podcast, or if I'm just going to record my live teachings via audio so that people can go back and listen to it. I've had a lot of requests over the past year about starting a podcast. I don't necessarily know if that's my calling just yet, but we're going to test this thing on out. So I'm going to teach just like I normally teach. I know it's been a minute. I have not been on here in a very long time, especially not on a consistent basis, but I know that this is grind time. It's crunch time. A lot of individuals, a lot of you all are thinking about writing books, have already written books and have no idea how to publish, or are thinking about writing books. Or have already written books or whatever. And so I just want to make sure that you all are preparing, getting things straight so that 2019 can be the year that you either release your book or, you know, sell out of the books that you already have, okay? So the way I run my live classes, if you are ready, if you are listening, if you are attentive, if you have pen and paper, if you're taking note, just go ahead and put that writing hand emoji. Let me know that you're ready and you're listening. I'm not going to do too much teaching today because I really want to talk. If you saw my post on Instagram, I'm not sure if I posted it on Facebook in time, but on Instagram, I talked a little bit about the differences between writer's block and spirit block. So I brought the conversation to the forefront. Now we're going to talk about it. So go ahead and put that writing hand emoji. Let me know that you are here, you are listening, you are attentive. If you don't have the writing hand emoji, you can put the books emoji. You can put a pen emoji, just something that lets me know that you're in the right mode. Amen. And I say, all right. So let's go ahead and jump on into it. So first, I just want to kind of talk about my personal journey and why this particular topic is so important to me to expound on. Often, if you have been following me for a while, if you've been on any of my lives in the past, then you're familiar with just my philosophy that writer's block does not exist. Writer's block to me is a myth. To me, writer's block is simply a lack of preparation. And when I say preparation, I mean an adequate outline or blueprint of how you're going to write your book and just the framework of how you're going to execute the book. And so when I think about writer's block, that's all that comes to mind is that, you know, oftentimes when clients or individuals, tribe members come to me and be like, you know, I'm stuck, Mia. I've been working on my book for this long. I have no idea why, you know, I can't seem to push forward. Hey, Valerio. I don't know why I can't seem to push forward. When I hear those type of things, I'm always, the first question is, okay, so where's your outline? Did you outline your book? And oftentimes I am receiving some sort of response that says, you know, I didn't outline, or how do I outline? So, you know, anytime you find yourself in a block mode and you are just either getting started with your book or you've been writing for some time, you should go back and identify what your outline looks like. You know, create a framework, create a blueprint, make sure that you have a solid outline, because 9 times out of 10, if you don't have an outline for your book before you start the writing process, you're going to get stuck. It's almost inevitable. So writer's block is a myth. It just means you ain't prepared. So go backwards and make that happen. So, but what we're going to talk about today is how to identify the difference between writer's block and spiritual blocks. Okay, because oftentimes I find that a lot of my clients and tribe members are not stuck because they don't know what to write next. They're often stuck because they got a little bit more living to do, a little bit more experiencing to do, and it's just not time to move on that particular piece just yet. So we're going to talk about how to identify spiritual blocks in your writing and ways you can navigate through that. Okay. Hey y'all. Hey. So for my Instagram folks, yes, I cut my locks. Thank the Lord. You know, had to get that weight up off me, child. Yes, I cut my locks. Thank you. Hey everybody here on Instagram that is still joining in. So, all right, we're talking about spiritual blocks. So let's start with my story. This year, I went through a series of themes for what was supposed to be my memoir. I knew at the beginning of this year, not even the beginning of this year, but actually last year, on my 24th birthday, I decided that I was going to write a memoir for my 25th birthday. And I wanted to chronicle my life from, the end of my high school years to where I was. And so I felt like it was important for me to talk about some of my experiences being a teen mom, finishing high school early, getting into my career and kind of diving into entrepreneurship through college years, and, being a broke college student and dealing with all of the warfare that was coming from all angles with trying to finish a degree, trying to raise a child, trying to build a business and build a brand and all those type of things. I really thought I had it all together. I knew exactly what my book was going to be about. I had the outline. The outline had been outlined since the day my son was born. So I knew exactly what I thought was going to go into my book, my memoir. But this year, Most High ancestors, they showed me a whole nother, side of life. And everything that I thought I was going to put into this book was no longer on the table. And everything that I went through this particular year was what was, to me, told that I have to put that in the book. So, identifying spiritual blocks. When you find yourself writing, when you find yourself kind of in the zone or having your mind set on what you're going to write, and it seems as if things are coming at you at all angles, or you cannot seem to press forward or move forward with what you're supposed to say next, even though you have your outline and you know exactly what is to come next, then you're likely experiencing a spiritual block more so than a writer's block. And so for those of you who are spiritual individuals, whether you are a religious person, whether you are just in tune with your own just intuitive self, then you know what it feels like to be hit with that type of spiritual warfare. And so when it comes to your writing, you will find that your challenges are not so much not knowing what to say next, but more so knowing how to go about it, trying to identify who it's for, trying to identify how you can best word something so that it can reach the person that it's meant for. So before you even approach writing your book, you have to be very clear that your book is not going to be for everybody. So if you've ever, if that's ever rolled off your tongue or crossed your mind that my book, my topic is so universal, it's going to be for everybody. Anybody can read this book. It's going to be for men and women and children and Black people and white people and Hispanics and Asians and all this different stuff, then you are going to hit a roadblock very early on, because you have to first understand that your book is not for everybody. The reason your book is not for everybody is because you are going to be speaking and writing from a very biased standpoint. You have to look at the demographic of you before you look at who your book is going to approach, who your book is going to reach. So for example, myself, I am a young Black woman, a millennial, a mother, an activist. And so there are so many different layers to me where naturally my voice is going to be directed towards a specific group of people who will be able to resonate with my voice and my experiences. And so the same thing goes for you all. You have to get out of your mind that it's going to be for everybody, and identify who you are first, be clear on your role, and then you want to write and push forward with your writing with the mindset that this is going to more than likely affect the lives of those who are either similar to you. Either they have been through some of the things you've been through, either they're seeking the information that you know, or whatever the case. You just have to be clear on who you are, because who you are helps you to identify who your book is for. Okay. You want to, so back to my story real quick, y'all. So I thought I was going to have a book for my birthday. And it didn't happen. This year I encountered quite a bit of, spiritual blockages, where with my blueprint in hand, I could not seem to press forward with what I was going to write about, because I had to continue pushing through and living through certain experiences. So it was on hold. I mean, it's no other way to say it other than I literally physically could not write for the longest, no matter how much my mind was, dead set on making it happen, on writing the book. I used to, plan it in my day. I had my agenda. It would be like, I got this at 6:00, this at 7:00, this at 9:00. And then by 10:00, all I'm doing is writing. Or I would start my mornings 4:00 in the morning and get up like, okay, I'm going to spend the first 3 hours of my day dedicated and devoted to my writing. But it seemed as if no matter what I did, no matter the outline that I kept trying to tweak to see if that was the problem, no matter how early or how late I went to sleep, nothing could get it right. Like I just couldn't get it right. It just wasn't coming to me. And so I had to really meditate and pray on that and find out, why is it that I'm having such a difficult time writing this book when I know exactly what the book is about, what it's going to say, and all of that. I had to continue living. I had some more experience and I had to do some more learning. I had to do some more listening. I had to do some more witnessing. I had to do. It was just so much that had to be done before I could really take on this book the way I thought it would. And I think about it and I laugh, because I think about how sure I thought I was when it came to my book. And then looking at all that I've experienced over this year and all that could definitely go in the book now, it's like, oh man, if I would have put that book out at the time that I was planning to put it out, it wouldn't have even been half of, like, the impact wouldn't have been what it will be, because I wasn't done yet. I wasn't done experiencing. So granted, no matter what particular genre you're writing in, for me personally, I'm writing my memoir. So I'm talking from a very spiritual standpoint, a very emotional standpoint, because we're talking my life. And so it's different when you're writing about, you're writing fiction that is not necessarily tied to you or attached to you in any manner, children's books or any type of educational self-help book, stuff like that, where it's not so much personal as much as it is informative. You may find yourself really just kind of dealing with the writer's block side of things. Now, don't get me wrong. There's definitely room for spiritual block when you're writing nonfiction that is not personally attached to you, because you have to know what you're talking about. And if you don't know what you're talking about, if you're not very thorough and very skilled and very knowledgeable about whatever topic you're offering in your book, you're still going to come up against some roadblocks, because there's some work that needs to be done first. So that's just a little bit about my story. My book did not come out the way I wanted to this year, but I'm much more confident in what's going to come with the book when it does come out. I have not set a date. What I've decided is that I've set a date for finishing the writing, but I have not quite set a date for when I'm going to release the book, because I'm almost scared. I'm gonna be real honest. I'm a little scared to put a date there, just because I know that there's a possibility that I still got a little bit more learning to do and a little bit more experiencing to do. So I don't want to promote a day of release and things come to me that requires me to add a little bit more to my book. So that's just my story. And I just wanted to use that to just kind of open up the conversation, the conversation around writer's block versus spiritual blocks. So these are some things I wrote down. I'm not even going to come to y'all on no teaching manner today because this is just real personal for me. So I'm going to just kind of walk through the notes that I wrote down, things that I gathered from this year, and just my personal experience with spiritual blocks. And you all are welcome to take notes, welcome to take notes and just kind of internalize this because it's really good information. And it's my prayer that this will assist you all first in identifying whether or not what you're going through is a writer's block or if it's a spiritual block. And then if it's a spiritual block, giving you all some tools and ways to kind of push through it and prepare yourself for the outcome and the birth of the baby, the book baby, when it is time to actually release the book. Okay. So the first thing I wrote down was make sure what you've chosen to write is actually what you're supposed to be writing right now. I'm going to say that again. Make sure what you're chosen to write, what you have chosen to write, is actually what you're supposed to be writing right now. So I have a bunch of folks come to me all the time, every day, like, I got a book idea. I want to write this book. It's going to be about this. It's going to be about that. And they're super excited about all that's going to come with this book, right? But there are some things that you have to go through and grow through before you can write on a particular topic. And so now when we're talking fiction is one thing. You can be as creative as possible. You don't actually have to live out all of the experiences in a fictional book. However, a lot of fictional books are inspired by true stories. So in a way, you are going to need to experience a little bit, learn a little bit, and do a little bit more research before you can just go all in, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Okay. But you want to make sure that what you have decided to write about is something that you should be writing about right now. A lot of times we have great ideas, but the timing of it is not right now. Okay. Sometimes you have to learn to put ideas in a box. I have literally created a box because I always felt like it was a blessing and a curse that, I felt the Most High always gave me great ideas. I feel like I'm a visionary, that I have been blessed with the gift of being able to intuitively see things way before they come. And I see successful things falling in line way before it even happens. And so for me, I have jumped ahead of myself several times in the past. With the book ideas that, when I think of it, I'm like, oh, snap, that's a great idea. Let me go ahead and get started on it right now. But it's like, it's a great idea, but that don't mean that it's time for that right now. And so for books, I have it all the time, As a writer, I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks worth of ideas for books, for campaigns for books, for, topics to speak to you all about. So many different ideas that when it's so good, I can sometimes get excited and rush and, stumble over my feet later because I'm like, hold up, it wasn't time. I didn't even consult with, my spirit guides on whether or not this is something I should move forth with at this time. But because of the excitement of, oh, this is a great idea. Oh, this is going to be beneficial to whoever reads this book, this is going to be so inspirational. Oh, this is going to be the book that helps me make a name for myself. People going to know my name after this. People going to be screaming my praises after this. Sometimes we allow ego to force us to move a little faster than we should. Sometimes we allow just the pressures of seeing what other people are doing, trigger us to want to move a little faster than we should. And so you want to make sure that whatever it is you're writing, you need to really kind of do an analysis and see whether or not this is something that is beneficial to you first right now. And when I say you first, I mean that, okay? I mean it with every fiber inside of me. We should not, as writers, as future authors, and as authors already, your goal should not be to be writing books for the people that are going to read it. Now, that sounds a little crazy. It sounds like, what you mean by that, Nia? What does that mean? Of course, we're supposed to write it with the people in mind, but you don't want to get so caught up with the idea of writing for the individual who's going to read the book, and then you get trapped and you feel almost imprisoned because now you have to abide by the expectations that you set for yourself about what you think other people are expecting from you. That right there is a recipe for a disaster. It's a recipe for spiritual blocks, because that's not your calling. And that's not what you're supposed to be writing about. Not to say that you're not supposed to write about it at all, but it may not be what you're supposed to be writing about just right now. And if you find yourself stuck in trying to figure out, why can't I move forward, it's probably because now is not the time. Okay. So you want to make sure that what you have chosen to write is actually what you're supposed to be writing right now. Now, the ways you can identify this, I'm getting on the spiritual Black girl mode. And so if you're not following my blog, you should definitely be following my blog. If you're on Instagram, you can follow my blog at Spiritual Black Girl. If you're on Facebook and you have an Instagram, at Spiritual Black Girl. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this, because this year, when I tell y'all, this all is going into the book. This book was supposed to be something completely different, but it has turned into something completely opposite of what I was expecting. And it's all spirit, it's all divine, and I'm just following, what I believe is God's plan for me. So some of the ways that you can identify whether or not this is something you should be doing at this time. One, you need to pray about that. Okay. I don't know if y'all on here, if y'all are people of prayer, but if you're not, try to get in tune with yourself. Sometimes we can't verbally find the words to say, when we're speaking to our higher selves, when we're speaking to the Most High, we may not be able to find the words to articulate what it is we're trying to say. So it's okay to meditate. I know for me, I left the Christian church a couple of years ago. And so for someone who grew up in ministry, someone who had dedicated their lives to ministry, being a vocalist, having always been in positions where I could not necessarily just sit in the pews at church. I was always petitioned to do something. I found it very hard post leaving the church. I found praying hard. I felt like I was really dealing with some internal challenges with my relationship with God. And so I could not find the words to articulate the things that I was feeling inside. So I began to meditate. And so for me, meditation looks like sitting in total silence. I often have my sent messages candles going, and this is my business. So I'm a plug that real quick. Y'all need some candles, go ahead, let me know. Got you some good old candles going. But anyway, but I sit in my space, I zone out, I light my candles, I burn my incense, I play I listen to Native American flute music, so don't judge me. But I got that Native blood in my veins, so I would turn on my Native American flute music. I would wake up a little earlier in the morning before my family woke up, so that I wasn't in a space where I felt like I had to hurry up because now I got to go tend to my family. I would take a moment to just spend with myself, get up a little earlier, go to sleep a little later, and zone out. I could never find the words to say. It was so hard for me to find the words to say having left the church. But I began to get my rhythm back. Okay, I began to get my rhythm back through meditation. And so oftentimes when I had questions for God that I couldn't articulate verbally, I would write them down, write those questions down, put it in a box. When I was in the church, I remember my first lady one time, I think it was like for a Women's Day, our first lady gave each of the women a box that says, this whole prayer about, I'm the Lord, this is the box. If you have any questions, you have anything you need to say, anything we need to talk about, you put that in this box and you leave it there. And so because I wasn't in a space anymore where I could verbally, pray aloud like I used to, I just started to write my prayers and drop it in the box. Write my prayers, drop it in the box, and just meditate. I'll be in there meditating for about an hour, 2 hours straight, just doing nothing but in my zone. And then when it was in those quiet moments that I was able to start to see, okay, so this book I talked about writing, is it time for that right now? Why is it that this book is so difficult for me to write? Why is it that when I think about the experiences of being a teenage mother 2 years ago when I wanted to write this, it was coming to me like this? Granted, I was still going through some of the stuff. So I was like, it's fresh on my mind. I can talk about these things. But 2 years later, I'm in a whole nother space. Why is it so hard for me to reflect back on that? And why can't I just seem to get it out? Why can't I get it on paper? Why? So I began to write those prayers. I began to meditate on those things. And what I found myself, the answers to those prayers, I began to find within me again. So I had to really tune out and begin to really tap into my intuitive knowing. Okay. Here's my philosophy, y'all. I feel like a lot of the questions that we have about our lives, about what we're going through, about, our goals, about our career paths, about anything as it relates to us, like us and our personal selves, I truly believe we already know the answers. And, this can be something that can be argued, but, and it could also be just my personal experience or just those of the experiences of those around me. But for the most part, we often know the answers to our own questions. We just don't take the time to spend with ourselves long enough to hear those answers and to hear our inner selves telling us and screaming at us what that answer is. And I think that, our intuition is so powerful, and it's a blessing, like it's a God-given gift. It's something that we were granted in this lifetime to help aid us on our individual journeys, but we're often, overpowered by the sensationalism that comes through, social media, friendships, family, the words, and just the ideas of other people. We internalize those things so much that we drown out our own voice. And so I had to meditation and prayer really helped me to identify my voice and separate my voice from that of those who are closest to me. And the crazy thing is, those who are closest to you are the ones whose voices will smother you. And you really start to believe that what they are thinking, or their voices and their thoughts on whatever it is you got going on, is yours, just because you're so close to them that you begin to internalize their thoughts, feelings, and energies and believe that it's yours and not and can't separate the two. So I really encourage you all, and this is just in life, I know we talking about writing books and stuff, but on a life tip, I encourage you all to really take time to just spend in solitude. Even if that's a couple of minutes before you get your day started, or a couple of minutes before you go to bed at night, you need to really, really take initiative in being in solitude and being in a space where you can listen for your own voice. and listen for the voice of God. Listen for the voice of your ancestors. Listen to identify where the truth lies and not just what is logically going through your mind. What I've learned, if nothing else, from this year is that oftentimes the most logical explanation or the most logical response or the most logical approach to something is not necessarily the best, even though it's logical, even though it makes sense. And sometimes your inner voice don't sound like it makes sense, or you just don't understand it just yet. Sometimes you just got to learn how to trust that and ignore the logic for a split second, because when you tap into that intuitive knowing versus that logical knowing, you're tapping into spirit. You're tapping into your higher self, your higher consciousness. You're tapping into God. You're tapping into the God in you. So when you find yourself coming up with all of the logical explanations to justify whatever it is you're thinking about, don't hesitate or shy away from also tapping into the inner knowing, even if it doesn't make sense. And you can do this when it comes to your writing as well. If you find yourself hitting roadblocks and questioning why is it that I cannot seem to push forward or write more when I have my outline and it makes sense logically, like it all falls in line logically, why is it that I can't seem to get over this hump? That's a moment where you need to really go within. You need to really tap into that inner knowing. You need to tap into what your spirit is saying, because what your spirit is saying is the truth. It's the truth, and it's nothing but the truth. You know, whether you agree with it or not, it's the truth. And we have to learn to trust that. And that's where you'll find, that's where the answers, that's where the answers lie. So that's the first thing I wrote, you all. Make sure that what you've chosen to write is actually what you're supposed to write right now in that moment. And ways to do that is to pray through it, meditate through it, and tap into your intuitive knowing, because you're right. Most times you're right. All the time you're right. You just have to learn how to trust that. So next piece, you all. So I wrote, make sure you've done the internal work first, or make sure that you're doing it simultaneously as you're writing the book. I'm going to repeat that. Make sure you're doing the internal work either simultaneously or you've done the internal work. That internal work, when it comes to writing a book, when it comes to writing a memoir, when it comes to writing a book that you're teaching something, a nonfiction book, a self-help book, an educational book, a curriculum, a children's book. When you're writing these books, no matter what genre it is, you need to make sure that you've done the work first, okay? The work that you have to do within yourself. And so that work can look like forgiveness. That work can look like some serious healing from trauma. That work can look like therapy. That work can look like necessary conversations with individuals who might be in your book or who you might be referencing in your book. That work can look like getting the education, going to school or studying, and whatever it is you call yourself about to talk about in this book. That work can look like experience a little bit more, whether it's experience in your career, whether it's experience on the particular topic that you're speaking of, whether it's just experiencing more in your personal life so that you can share and have more to offer, okay? You have to literally do that internal work, because without doing that internal work first, or at the same time, you're going to find yourself constantly hitting that roadblock, because there are steps that have to be taken before you can say with confidence, I know what I'm talking about and I can write this with ease. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about, I'm going to use myself for example, y'all. Y'all know that anytime I'm teaching on something, it comes from experience. And so I use myself as example because I can only speak from what I know, right? For me, when it came to writing my memoir, there was a lot of There was a lot of unspoken words that I had not verbalized to myself first and foremost, and then to those who affected my life and my life story, whether good or bad. Okay. There were conversations that I needed to have where I gave thanks for individuals who came into my path, who assisted me on my life path, who have poured into me, who have, helped me in some kind of manner. There were those thankful conversations that I needed to have, but then there were also those necessary conversations where some healing needed to take place, some understanding needed to take place, some reconciliation needed to take place. And so I found myself constantly hitting that wall where if there was a particular part in my book where I wanted to speak on a particular person or a particular experience with someone that was necessary to put in the book because it held weight and it would be impactful to the story as a whole, I realized I could not move forward until I had those conversations with those individuals. So for me, those conversations, a lot of those were family related, I didn't realize until writing my book that I had some serious underlying issues with my parents that I hadn't addressed and that I was fearful of addressing or didn't feel comfortable about addressing because I didn't want to upset them. But I realized that certain conversations just had to be had. I had to have them in order to feel comfortable enough putting it into a book. Okay, so when you're writing your memoir in particular, or you're writing a book where you're infusing your own personal experiences with whatever it is you're offering in the book, you have to be mindful that, one, you want to be protective of whoever it is that's in the book that you might be referencing, whether you use their names or not. You want to protect yourself first because you don't want to upset anyone, and you definitely don't want nobody suing you, especially if it's your first book. So that's something to think about. And then you also, we often think about, how are people going to receive this? How are the people that are closest to us going to think when they read this, especially if they didn't know this already, Sometimes we put in our books our heart and our soul, and these are things that we haven't even verbally expressed to the ones who, are closest to us. And so we fear judgment, we fear ridicule, we fear backlash. All of these things come to mind when we're trying to press forward with the writing process. So like I said, you have to do that internal work first. That internal work can look like a plethora of things, but it's up to you to identify what that work is and then make a commitment to doing that work so that what you put in your book is authentic to you first, because that authenticity for you first is what is going to make your book be what it is and become what it is. I can't even count the amount of people who have put out books that were not true to themselves, but they put it out thinking that it was going to help build their brand, boost their status, put them in spaces and places and positions to do more. But the thing is, they came from a very unauthentic standpoint. It wasn't true to them first. And then, it just wasn't, they weren't called to do that work. They weren't called to write about that work. You have to be sure that you're called to do this. It goes back to making sure that what you're writing is what you're supposed to be writing right now. You also want to make sure that you're called to write about this particular topic, because just because you know something or just because you've been through something doesn't mean that you're called to do that work. And so if you're called to do that work, you will know, because you will identify the pieces of the puzzle within you that you have to work through to get it done. When you are called to do a work, it's not going to come easily. I'm going to say that again, because that's a whole word. when you are called to do a work, it's not going to come easy in the beginning. Okay. But once you identify that calling and you identify the steps that you have to take in order to see that thing through, everything is going to fall in line. So when you find yourself hitting those roadblocks, hitting those spirit blocks where you can't seem to push past what next, then you need to take a step back, recalibrate, question, ask God, meditate on that, listen to your intuitive self, and identify, is this what I'm called to do? And if it is what you're called to do, you will get that confirmation. Okay. But up until that point, that is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Everything is going to feel hard. It's going to feel overwhelming. But once you are clear that this is what I'm called to do, and you ask for the strength and the guidance and whatever else you need, whatever else, other powerful force you need to put things in motion, you will begin to see everything fall in line for you. And it will no longer feel forced. It will feel like, okay, this is the work. This is what I'm called to do. And now I'm submitting to that work. Okay. So, like I said, you want to make sure that you've done the internal work. That work looks like forgiveness. That work can look like healing from trauma, healing from loss, healing from heartbreak. That can look like going to therapy. That can look like getting any type of assistance that you need, whether it's mental health help, whether it's physical help, whether you need to get to the doctor. It could be a lot of things. It could be having those necessary conversations with those who you love, those who you don't F with no more. It could be sitting down and coming to some sort of agreement with someone, or just coming to the agreement that we ain't messing with each other no more, or this is not for us and this relationship just does nothing for us anymore. That can be family, that can be friends, that can be romantic relationships. It can be any of those things. You also need to do the education piece, right? If you know that you want to talk about a specific topic, but you ain't even all the way knowledgeable about that, you might need to go learn a little bit more. Put in the work of identifying the truth in whatever it is that you call yourself about to talk about. And if that means experiencing a little bit more, whether in life, whether in your career, whether in what you're working on, you need to do that work before you push forward. Because until you do that work, you're going to find it continuously feeling like a struggle. But once you begin to do the work, and what I call meeting God halfway, because, the Bible says faith without works is dead, right? So, no matter what spiritual system you believe in, that right there is a word, and you can take that wherever, right? If you want something, or if you're putting out there into the atmosphere that you need something, or you're desiring something and you want the Most High to come and work on your behalf, you have to be willing to put in the work. Okay, so make sure you're also qualified. I hear that a lot too. Folks come to me and be like, I don't know if I'm qualified. How do I know if I'm qualified? If you're questioning whether you're qualified, you're not qualified. And this is interesting too, because I've actually said in the past, you are qualified. I've said that with pride, but I realized that at that time, that was ego speaking. Like, what you mean? If you got the idea, then yes, you qualified to write about it. That is a whole lie. So if you ever took that from me, scratch that out your mind. That ain't even real. Because if you have to question whether you're qualified for something, it shows that you're not in tune with yourself enough to even know what your limits are, if any, or what you are capable of. Okay. So first, you have to tap into you. Another reason people ask if they're qualified is because you're listening to the voices of those around you, or you're in spaces where you're not encouraged to do and be the things that you say you want to do and be. And you're not encouraged to write the book because maybe you're not in a space where there's support coming from all angles. So you question whether or not you're qualified because somebody might have asked if you were qualified for that. Forget what they're saying. If you feel deep down in your soul and in your spirit that you are qualified and you work hard for something, then you need to go forth. Because as soon as you start moving forth, everything is going to fall in line. But if you are questioning consistently whether or not you are qualified for to speak on a particular topic, then you need to spend some time in meditation, spend some time in prayer. You need to identify that for yourself. Okay, question that and trust that gut feeling. If you do not feel like you are qualified, go do the work. It does not mean that book is not for you at all. It does not mean that you can't talk about that book at all, or you can't write this book at all. It just means that you got to do the work first. Especially if you really believe it, you have to do the work first. So the third piece, y'all, I wrote, give yourself permission. When you know it's right, sometimes you have to silence the other voices and affirm yourself. I'm going to say that again. You want to give yourself permission. When I say give yourself permission, that means give yourself permission to write this book. And it may sound crazy. You know, what does that mean, Nia? What do you mean by give yourself permission? It means if you have to step in front of the mirror and say, listen, okay, self, I give myself permission to write this book because one, I've been called to do this work. I've been called to write this book, you know, or I know deep down in my spirit and my soul that what I have to offer is valuable and it's going to be beneficial to someone else. Okay, so you have to give yourself that permission. And oftentimes we neglect to give ourselves permission because of those outside voices. So again, you have to get in tune with you and you have to find that inner voice that affirms you. And then you have to verbally affirm yourself. Okay, you can't just allow the voice to just stay within. You know, oftentimes that voice on the inside is yearning for you to vocalize it on the outside because it makes so much more sense when you hear it, you know, rather than when you're just thinking it. Oftentimes when we're just thinking it or when we're hearing that inner voice, we think, oh, this is just my mind. You know, my mind is racing, you know, I'm overthinking, you know, it's just too much going on. I don't know how to identify my thoughts with that spirit voice. You know, you have to verbalize what you truly believe is your truth. Okay. If you know deep down in your spirit that this is for you, say it aloud. And so this is one of the hardest things. One of the things that has been difficult for me this year and just on my spiritual walk is vocalizing it, is verbally affirming myself. I can write and affirm myself, you know, if I'm trying to remember my power, if I'm trying to remind myself that I am capable of doing this work, that I was called to do this work, that, you know, all of the forces around me are moving in the direction for me to do this work. So everything is aligning in perfect form. If I didn't verbally speak that, it became still difficult for me to believe. Not difficult to believe wholeheartedly, but challenging for me on a day-to-day basis to stay encouraged. The thing is, when you're writing a book, especially when you're not around folks who are also writing books, okay, when you're not in a space where everybody's kind of doing the same thing, so you can kind of relate, y'all can kind of talk about things together that, you know, your inner circle may not understand. When you're not in those type of spaces, you will find that it's a little more challenging to stay encouraged. So you have to literally verbally affirm yourself, be your own best friend. I had to get in my mind that no matter how close me and my best friends were, and no matter how much I could talk to them about everything, they're not writing books. Now, granted, two of my closest friends out of my circle have published books, and so I can talk to them about it, but, you know, my close friend, you know, my best friend, my sister, you know, she's just not on that wavelength. She ain't thinking about writing no book. She thinking about living her best life, you know? So for me, as a creative person, as a person who wants to write, as a person who wants to be able to bounce ideas off of those closest to me, it has been a challenge. I have really felt extremely lonely. And this year in particular, as I've been trying to write my memoir, it has been one of the loneliest years of my life. You know, it's been great in so many different areas of my life. Business was great, you know, business was great. That's about it this year. But business was great, right? But everything else seemed to be very, very challenging. And when it came to writing my book, it just seemed like I could not talk to anybody. I found myself talking to my clients often, but having to remember that, you know what, Nia, you can't, and you can't put all of your stresses and your issues onto your clients, because they're looking at you and depending on you to keep them afloat so that they can produce their books. You know, you on book number 4 and 5, you know, they're on book number 1. You can't put all of that on them. So I literally had to go to therapy, like legit. I was like, bruh, you know, I didn't think that I was one of those people who needed therapy. But then when I started going to therapy, I realized there's no such thing as those people who need therapy. It's just a matter of, bro, you need somebody to talk to. And everybody that's around you right now, they're not on the wavelength that you're on. I'm one of those people who I don't necessarily seek advice from people who have not been through what I'm going through. I just have this thing where it's like, you can't really tell me too much of nothing because you ain't been through it, you know? So I always seek after individuals who have been where I am going, who are doing what I'm trying to do, because I feel like that's where I can get real wisdom, you know? But when you open yourself up to those type of when you open yourself up to getting the opinions of people who have never been in your position or who have never written a book, all you're going to get is opinions. You're going to get those opinions. Some will be encouraging, some will be discouraging. But it's up to you to not, one, internalize all of that. And then 2, it's up to you to identify who you can really talk to. So let me pause real quick. Instagram is about to cut off. I got like 15 more seconds. I'm going to come right back. on Instagram. If you had questions, they're going to get lost. Just ask them again and I will address them. So come right back on Instagram. Facebook, y'all are good, but Instagram is about to cut off. So just wanted to make that real quick. And it is off. Let me pull it right back up. Hey, Angelique. Yes, girl, I cut my hair, girl. All right, so let me pull this back up. Writer's block or spirit block. And let's pause that. All right. Oh. Okay, there we go. All right, so Instagram is coming right back up. Instagram is coming back up. When you get on Instagram, go ahead and, hit the hearts real quick. Let me know you're here. I'm going to get right back into it. But yes, you also be very careful about who you expose yourself to. Exposing yourself, meaning exposing your ideas, exposing your plans for your books, exposing just layers of yourself for the approval or the encouragement or the advice of other people. If those individuals that you are seeking some sort of response from have not been where you're going, have not done what you're doing, then be very careful. I'm not going to say don't approach people with these ideas or with what you're talking about, but you want to be very careful and protect your energy, protect your spirit, protect your inner knowing, because when you open that door, you're allowing there to be a possibility that someone will discourage you. Someone will not want to see you win. Someone will not understand what you're doing. And that can work numbers on our psyche, on our consciousness, it can really dampen our spirit sometimes, you know, when people just don't seem to get it. So when you find yourself in those spaces, or when you find yourself really needing to reach out to people and ask those who haven't been where you've been and where you're going, just keep in mind that when you open that door, be guarded, okay? And do not internalize everything that people say. Don't internalize it, because if you internalize that, you're going to make yourself crazy. You make yourself crazy, and you will feel not only lonely, but that can trigger depression. It can trigger a spiral downward when you're relying on, or you're internalizing the voices of other people who just cannot relate. Okay, so give yourself permission to write your books. Verbally affirm yourself. You know, if you know that this is what you're supposed to do, if you know that this book is your calling, if you know that it is something that you have to get off your chest, that you have to publish, and that you have to use as a tool to impact the people that you need to impact on the level you need to impact them on, affirm yourself, not just internally, but verbally, externally. Speak it out loud, because it can do great things just for your approach moving forward. So that was the third piece. The last piece, you want to make writing a part of your daily devotion. Make writing a part of your daily devotion. So, I mentioned before that I probably get up early in the morning. I started getting up at 4 a.m. So I've pretty much been on that type of consistent schedule this year. It's just the 4 a.m, because I realized that that's the time that I have where I just don't have to be responsible for anybody else in my house but myself in that moment. And so that's when I can really just focus in, on, my day, my week, my goals, my spirit, my intuition, my God, my ancestors. That's my time, my me time. And what I have learned is that as I'm writing books, that's a good time for me to write, because I'm already focused. I'm already in a space where I'm feeling confident about just where I am. Even on my least confident days, I feel like just being able to be in a space where I can hear my own voice outside of other voices, I feel empowered to go forth with whatever it is I'm contemplating. So I have begun to incorporate writing in my daily devotion. And so your daily devotion, you can do it however you want to do it. Like my best friend, her daily devotion is on her ride to work in the car. And it encompasses a whole lot of, talking aloud. People be looking at her crazy when she driving down, the highway, and it looked like she talking to herself. It may include, a whole lot of checking herself. It might even include cussing herself out, cussing whoever out in the space. It can include a lot of things. Your daily devotion does not have to be what someone else's is. Okay. But whatever it is, try to incorporate your writing in that. Okay. And sometimes incorporating your writing doesn't necessarily mean getting a pen and a pad and writing it down. Now, if you're someone who journals often, then that might be a beautiful thing, just add that to your journaling, get it in, get your journal out, write whatever you need to write, all of that good stuff, but sometimes it don't take that. Sometimes you might need to just turn on your recorder and just record yourself going in, no matter what it is, and that's, I've been telling my best friend for the longest, girl, when you in those spaces, turn your recorder on, on your phone, and record everything you saying to yourself, because that can be a book one day. She ain't on that wavelength. She ain't thinking about writing no books. So I know I can't talk to her about books like that. But if that's you, Kiosha, if that's you, them self-talks, those are the best times to record yourself, because that's content that can go in a book. You're writing your book without even thinking about writing your book. You just talking stuff out. You going through the motions. You trying to figure stuff out. Yeah, it really works. It really works, especially for elders. Anytime I'm talking to some elders, or if there's anyone where I want to sit at the feet and just listen to their stories, I'm always asking for permission to record them. Always. Because I know that the voices of the elders, when they transition on, if nobody's documenting their voices and their words, then that goes on with them. And y'all know when you sit at the feet of the elders, bro, they got wisdom and knowledge for days. They offering gems daily. Now, granted, they love to talk about themselves and back in their day, and they love to throw shade too. But the best conversations, the greatest wisdom comes from sitting at the feet of the elders. So, if you have elders in your girl, like, listen, y'all, I wish I still had my grandparents. I don't have now nary none of them, all of them gone. And it's like, I did not appreciate, their talks. I didn't appreciate those words and all of that when they were still here. I was young. I ain't understand it. I ain't understand why it was so important to really listen and to really take heed. But if I could, I would go back. If they were still here, I would be turning on the record, because I want to be able to hold on to those things. So you have to think of that even when it comes to you. Think about your children, think about those who depend on you, think about your legacy, think about those around you, your tribe. Even if you don't feel like writing a book, pen to paper writing a book, consider those who need to hear your words. Consider that, record it, go back and document it. And so here's just my spiel on just being Black, right? Y'all know my business. My daddy used to be like, he used to be like, so what you gonna do if a white man come and ask you to edit his book? I'm like, I'm probably not even gonna be polite. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna just be like, bruh, like I'm not for you. He ain't even gonna feel like he can approach me, because what I got to offer is not for you. It's just not for you. I am very, very clear on who my work, my words, and my legacy is to affect, and that's my people. Straight up, like all day, and there's no type of apology about it. I know who my stuff is for. And so that's another thing that goes back to you all, to when you're trying to identify your target audience. Okay. When you're trying to identify your target audience, you have to identify you first, because you are the indication. You're the first target audience, who you are. My first target audience will always be Black women, no matter what I write, because I'm a Black woman and can't nobody relate to me better than a Black woman, right? And then from there, I can build and expound on who my audience is. But I don't want to ever put myself in a space where I'm trying to verbally or literally with my writing appease to an audience that is not me first. It's me first, always me first. And I encourage each of you to go forth with that mindset too, that it is you first, okay? And it's not selfish, it's not self-centered. It's true to yourself first, because if you're not true to yourself first, and if you're not feeding yourself first, then there's no way you can authentically feed anyone else. There's no way. There's absolutely no way that you can authentically feed any other person with your words if you're not first feeding yourself. You should be able to go through, read your book, and be so inspired about what you said or what you've been through, because you speak to you first. You nourish yourself first. And from there, the truth and the authenticity that lies in nourishing yourself and your own spirit first when it comes to your writing is going to bleed so much that people are going to see that. You're never going to have to question your authenticity. People are not going to question whether or not you're an opportunist. They're not going to question whether or not you really know what you're talking about. They're not going to question whether or not, you're the best person to talk about a specific subject. When you are true to yourself first, there's nothing anyone can ever say to challenge you. because you were true to you first. Now, when you try to go speak the language of another demographic that is not you, you're going to come off as, I don't know what they're talking about, or they a little iffy, or that might be a little fake, or, I don't necessarily know if I can trust that. Oftentimes, our intuitive knowing, we know who we can trust right off the bat. We know whether or not the energy is just not right with someone. We know whether or not what someone is saying is to be trusted. We kind of know that off the bat. We know these things. We just don't listen to ourselves. And then we put logic over intuition, and we try to come up with all these reasons to justify why we might be right about a person or why we might be wrong about a person. But you already know. But when you're being true to yourself first, in your writing, in your words, in the way you move, it can be questioned, but it can never be challenged in a sense where what you have will come crumbling down, because your truth and holding on to the truth within you, that's your integrity. That it can't be questioned. And you will find that you will reach heights and heights of success that you didn't even know you could, just off of that authenticity, that transparency, and that being true to yourself. All right, y'all. So I'm done preaching for the night. I think I recovered everything. How do you start your days? We talked about that. How do you end your days? Find a way to incorporate your writing through that process. Let's see. How can you authentically incorporate writing into your schedule where it feels good and empowering rather than rushed and frustrated? So just a quick recap of everything I talked about tonight, y'all, and then we're going to close it out. I'm going to give you all opportunity to ask questions because I know I missed a lot of questions from the first feed on Instagram. But the first thing you want to do, of course, is make sure that what you've chosen to write is actually what you're supposed to write and what you're supposed to be writing right now. How do you do that? You pray on that, you meditate on that, you follow your intuition, you tune into your inner knowing, and you disassociate yourself from logic for a split second. Second thing, you want to make sure that you've done the internal work first or simultaneously. That internal work can look like forgiveness. It can look like healing. It can look like healing from trauma, healing from heartbreak, healing from loss. It can look like therapy. It can look like necessary conversations. It can look like getting the education you need or getting the experience that you need. It can look like making sure that you're qualified before you take on the feat of trying to write a book about something that you know nothing about or not enough about. And then you want to give yourself permission. Verbally affirm yourself when you know it's right. Sometimes you have to silence the voices of other people and you have to amplify the voice of yourself. Okay, how do you do that? You spend time in solitude, whether that's going in your closet for a minute, sitting down and just zoning out everybody else's voices and verbally affirming what you know about yourself. Do not just allow your affirmations to stay in your mind, because sometimes that can be confused with overthinking. Verbally affirm yourself, speak it aloud, write it down, make it a part of your daily devotion, your daily routine. I can write this book. I am writing this book. This book is my life story. This book is going to empower and educate and or inspire several people around the world. And I know I can do this work because it's true to me first. And then, of course, you all want to make writing a part of your daily devotion, whether it's getting up early in the morning, whether it's going to bed a little bit later, whatever that looks like. You want to make sure that you do that so that you are not only tuning into the spirit, but you're also pushing through the spiritual blocks by getting the book still written. You want to write. You don't want to get too complacent to where you completely submit to the warfare you're dealing with or the challenges you're dealing with spiritually, that you just completely lose your sauce when it comes to writing. Because then you're going to find yourself in a whole hump. Like, okay, I done said I'm going to write this book and it still ain't here yet. You might, don't get confused with spiritual blocks and laziness either, okay? Because there's a difference. So I'm done talking. Let me try to go back and answer some questions. If you had questions on the first live feed and I didn't get to answer them, please put it back in there if I haven't answered it while I was talking so that I can address it. And then, let's see. I also want to give you all their libraries when they die. They burn down the library. You're so correct. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. I need to link with you, but yes, gotta come. I often say on my posts that I'm speaking to myself. People just gonna witness my conversation. That's real. That's real. That's real. So, last thing, you all, housekeeping. So I have this week, if you have tried to start writing your book or have tried to outline your book and you find yourself struggling on that, if you cannot seem to push through so that you have a blueprint for your book and you know exactly what you're talking about, then you probably need a strategy session with me. So this week only, I am offering strategy sessions for 50% off. That is a whole half off. My strategy sessions start at $200. So if you want to book a strategy session with me and you do not want to pay $200, if you can do half of that, you can get me on your schedule and we can get you set up so that you have a blueprint for your book before the top of the year. The last thing is I am going to be hosting what I call the Book Baby Project. So y'all know I am like a publishing doula. You know, I help my clients birth these book babies from beginning to end. And so next year, starting on January 7th to April 26th, I am going to be hosting the Book Baby Project. I'm going to be taking on 12 people who want to work in a group setting. You are going to finish or start and finish writing your book, branding for your book and branding yourself as an author, setting up the systems that you need in place to successfully market your book when it is ready, and then learning how to self-publish your book without breaking the bank and doing it right the first time. Okay, so you're getting 4 months of one-on-one with Nia and being in that group setting where the accountability piece is there, where you will be able to be in community with others who are writing the book as well. And then every tool and resource that I offer my individual one-on-one partner publishing clients, I'm going to be teaching you all that I'm working with them on individually as a group. So if you're interested in being a part of the Book Baby Project, what I want you to do is email me. Email me directly at Nia, that's N-I-A, at theliteraryrevolutionary.com. Okay, I didn't say DM me. I ain't say drop no comment on a picture. You can do that. You can DM me too. But if you want to be a part of the Book Baby Project, this is the very first step to identifying whether or not you're serious. It's handling that first instruction. Don't DM me about the Book Baby Project. Don't comment about the Book Baby Project. Email me if you want to be a part of it. Okay. The Book Baby Project, the value of this project is $2,000. However, for the month of December, anyone who wants to join can do it at $1,000. It is not something that you have to pay for all up front. There are 3 payment plan options. You can choose to pay $250 per month. That is $250 for January, $250 for February, $250 for March, $250 for April. That's how you can pay it off. You can pay 2 payments of $500. That is a payment of $500 in January and a payment of $500 in March. Okay. Or if you want to pay in full, it'll be $100 off. So you actually get to get all of it for only $900 if that's something you want to do. Now, in order to secure your spot, because it is a first come, first serve type situation, you will need to have sent me an email, filled out the questionnaire that I send you, and make a deposit of $125 to hold your spot by December 17th. Okay, I'm going to say that again. If you're interested in joining the Book Baby Project and you are not in a position to pay for it in full, you do not. I am all for payment plans. I do not believe in paying for something all up front. You know, if you can work that thing on out, and if you don't have it, you can do that, right? It is $1,000 total. If you want to secure your spot within the Book Baby Project, you have to make a deposit of $125 by the 17th of December. It is first come, first serve. I have 12 spots. Well, I had 12 spots available. I only have 9 spots left because 3 people have already secured their spots. Okay. So if this is something that you want to do, please email me. If you DM me, you're already canceled because you ain't following instructions. So that lets me know you ain't serious. Okay. Nia, N-I-A, at theliteraryrevolutionary.com. I will send you a questionnaire and we will proceed. I really would love to help you all birth some book babies in 2019. I won't be taking on as many partner publishing clients next year because I will really be focused on writing my books next year. So if you want me to assist you, please be on the lookout for these group style publishing courses. All right, y'all, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and log on off. You all have a beautiful night. I am going to be back on here tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will likely be on my lives every night this month, I think, every weeknight. I'm going to try to do every week night or day throughout the month of December because I know plenty of you all are working on gearing up to release books in 2019, and I want you to be as ready as possible. So, any other questions? Yes, no, maybe so. If not, y'all have a beautiful night. Peace, love, power, and prosperity to you. Y'all be easy.